update on all the different programs that were being administered out of DOA with the CARES Act funds. And I know you prepped that info, so go ahead, Mr. Birn.
Let me start with the unemployment payments.
Okay.
As you know, we received a batch from DOL at the end of last week, and early this week, the direct deposits went into the recipients' bank accounts. Those that are being paid by check are being processed now, but as you mentioned earlier, the banks weren't open, and therefore people couldn't cash their checks. The banks will be open tomorrow, so we'll go ahead and progress the printing of those checks. As far as the program, SOLAPE program is concerned, when we went to the government shutdown at the end of last week, I think we were 99.4% complete with processing. So when we resume, we will process that remaining 0.6%, which is something like 400 applications. And as I mentioned to you before, 2/3 of those applications have been rejected as having been already fulfilled under some other program. And I've just heard this morning from US Treasury that they will pay us the last 21 repayments under the War Claims Act payments, and that program will be closed too. So we've actually got through quite a few programs despite the difficulties that we've had with the government shutdown.
Right. Eder, how are you guys involved, if you are, with the GIDA, the Small Business Grant Program?
We process the checks that are submitted to us by GIDA.
Okay.
So we get batches from GIDA. And again, I think we got 2 batches on Friday that we're processing as quickly as we can with the skeleton staff that we have. I think that was only about, I would guess about 50 recipients. But it's up to them to determine who are the recipients of the program.
Right. And so what's like the average payout?
I've seen they're very variable. I've seen amounts that vary from about $300, some even were like $50, to amounts approaching $10,000. It's variable depending on the size of the business, but that's as to how the figures were actually computed. That's a GIDA request that you'll have to ask them.
So do you know how much money we have left out of that? It was 20 million, right? So how much have you guys paid out?
We've paid out just about 15 million.
Okay. And other programs, Ed, are you guys involved with that you want to give us an update on, or?
I don't think there are too many other programs that require further attention.
Thank you.
So we got through many of these programs. Of course, and you'll be talking to Daphne later.
Right.
There's still EIP payments to be paid out,
right.
And they go through this office too. And we'll react as quickly as we can when we get the information from DRT.
Okay.
Are you guys handling the MNGAFA program, or is that still just DRT?
DRT, I mean, eventually the payments will come to us, but DRT is charged with managing the program.
Right. Ed, the one thing we did hear was Treasury of Guam's going to open, right?
Yes, it's going to open tomorrow for business. ITC only.
What's the protocol?
We have protocol in the building. It's a rented building, so we work in association with the building owner. There are markings on the floor. Unfortunately, I go down there once a day to check that we've got an orderly process. For Treasury of Guam, now that the GPD side, which is on the other side of the corridor, is closed, it's pretty orderly, and we don't have many lines, but people have to stand outside if there are too many people in that entryway.
So they queue up outside, eh? Sorry, I just noticed.
If necessary.
I noticed
there's
queue.
the ability, I think there are 2 or 3 patches inside.
Right.
But it's no different from from the grocery store. So if there are too many people, they have to wait outside.
Right on.
Mr. Birn, can you provide any information as to whether any government of Guam agencies are behind in overtime payments?
Well, that's some information we don't know about the overtime until it gets presented to us. So that information you'll have to ask those agencies. As far as DOA is concerned, we follow the rules and process the overtime, providing the agency that we're paying the payroll for follows all the rules, and we make sure that they do.
Okay.
And so based on the paperwork that has been submitted, that you guys oversee, have they all
Yes.
been paid their overtime?
And we've paid, I mean, obviously, this week we're paying some because it's not a payroll week. This week we're processing some overtime that we've received in the last few days, but we are up to date with what we have received.
From which agencies are you receiving the overtime requests?
Well, most agencies have submitted overtime, but obviously the big law enforcement agencies are the ones where the most amount of overtime is.
Right.
And you don't keep track on whether or not they have been paid their overtime?
Well, yes, we keep on track on whether we've paid what we've received.
Right.
We can't guess at people's overtime. We're working to make sure, and this is more of a long-term project. We're working to make sure that overtime is reported at the same time as regular time, because it's meant to be a timesheet, and it should include all the hours. And we're working hard to make sure that in future we get a more consistent reporting system.
Right on. Okay, Mr. Birn, you good, Bree? Anything else?
Yeah, because it sounds like he's just getting upset.
You good?
Yeah.
Yeah, because we hear from the law enforcement, Mr. Birn, that they're like 5 to 7 pay periods behind. I'm also hearing that people are not getting their hazard pay. I don't know which hazard pay they're talking about. But you're saying you don't know if we're behind until you get the request, and it's like, hey, Mr. Birn, can you pay the last 7 pay periods overtime? And it's only then that you know.
We'll pay whatever is presented to us, providing it complies with everything. I encourage all agencies to report their overtime, as I say, at the same time as their regular time, every other week, just like everything else. We tend to treat overtime separately. There's really no reason to do that. In fact, it tends to complicate things.
Do you have agencies that Do you have agencies that aren't reporting their overtime then?
We have agencies that are behind in reporting their overtime.
Okay, so let's go down the list. GPD?
To be fair to those agencies, I think it's an attempt on their part to make sure that overtime is controlled and authorized. But the net effect is that if it's delayed coming here, then to the people that have worked overtime, it appears that they're owed overtime for several weeks.
Oh, they are. Yeah. Okay, so agencies, get your
Paperwork
together
in.
and submit it, because we're hearing that people aren't getting paid overtime, and these are frontline employees. That you're right, you shouldn't have to wait 5 to 7 pay periods. Good luck doing that in the private sector. Thanks, Ed.
I agree, and I support. I support your appeal is very timely.
Okay, good. Right on. Thank you, Mr. Birn.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
right on. 8:21. Let's keep it going.